Hurricane Maria was a Category 5 hurricane with sustained winds of over 175 miles per hour when it smashed into the Virgin Islands on September 20 at 5 in the morning. 2 hours later, it slammed into Puerto Rico. Devastating damage. Entire power grid down. Cell towers down. Portions of buildings blown away. Landslides resulting in flooding. For many, no power, no water, no access. A lot of companies on the mainland have assets in Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. My company has assets there too. I work for GSA, General Services Administration. Our agency is the property managers for the federal government. We own, repair, and maintain federal courthouses, all the federal buildings, border crossing stations, various parcels of land for different things, and leases. We have thousands and thousands of leases. We put the VA, we put Social Security, we put FBI, we put them into buildings and we manage their leases for them. I work in Region 5. That's Minnesota, Michigan, Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio. It's Region 5. Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands are in Region 2, which includes the Caribbean, New York, and New Jersey. My counterpart group in Region 2 was shorthanded, so my buddy Eric called me and asked me if I was able and willing to help him. And that was on a Wednesday. I checked my calendar, I agreed, and on Thursday morning he put his formal request in, and I was on an airplane on Sunday. This is a map of Puerto Rico, where I took off to, and I'm sitting on the plane going down from Chicago, and I'm talking to the people next to me, and I ask, what are you going to be doing in Puerto Rico? And they said, we're coming down there to pick up our parents. They're elderly, there's no one helping them, we're coming to get them so that they can live. I go, what do you mean? He said, well, there's no water, there's no power, there's no one really there to look after them. We're tired of talking to them and trying to convince them, so we're just coming out so that we can save their lives. And the people in front of me heard that conversation, they turned around and they told me they were doing the same thing, and the people behind me were doing the same thing. So they were just going up Puerto Rico to bring them and just leave everything, leave the house, leave everything in there, and just up and go. I landed in Puerto Rico when the team met me, and they brought me to the hotel. These are the locations in Puerto Rico that GSA either owns or leases. We stayed at one of the hotels, but we're not the first responders, we're like the fourth responders. The first responders are the ones that come out and rescue and save lives. There are plenty of them in the hotel and their dogs. And then the second responders are usually the security. They come out there to stabilize anything that's unstable, and they plan for the worst case. Most of them were cops of one sort or another, different military groups, all kinds of automatic weapons, and enough ammunition to hold off a small assault. The third responders are the ones that come and make places safe. They set up logistics, they bring in the food, the water, communications, and whatever else is needed right now. Then comes us, the damage assessment teams, and we're coming down there to try to determine what has to happen for our agencies to get back to doing whatever it is that they were doing. These are two of the Virgin Islands, St. John and St. Thomas. When the hurricane hit, power was out over 90% of the island, and that was 19 days later. Two big differences between the hurricanes that hit Florida and Houston compared to Maria that hit Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. First, on the islands here, nearly all of the power grid is pole mounted, and it was old, and it was not maintained very well, and it was in pretty bad shape before the storm hit, and then when it did, nearly everything was knocked out. Secondly, you saw on television the utility trucks with police escorts southbound on the interstates to help restore power in Texas and Florida. Well, they were about 95% reconnected within 36 hours of the storm. The work is usually done through mutual assistance programs, but there is no interstate road to Puerto Rico, and there were no mutual assistance programs with the states in place at the time. The third main island of the Virgin Islands is St. Croix. Spanish speakers pronounce the X the way English pronounces X, so we call it St. Croix. And I actually went to all of these um, locations. Um, when we get to St. Croix, there are just piles and piles of debris everywhere, and what we call power line spaghetti, where the poles are laying there in the wires. Um, they were working on them. They were trying to clear, but there was just so much. It was overwhelming. On that island, they had one working cell tower, and someone stole the generator. When the governor found out, he put the word on the street that they will find their generator, and anybody associated with the stealing of it was going to spend about 60 years in a federal prison. That generator showed up back up that very night. Um, One of the problems is that there was so much damage in St. Croix and so little resources to pick anything up and absolutely no place to put it. We saw groups of civilians and kids just dragging branches and rocks and moving things along to try to open up the roads. This is Kevin and I, Kevin Santee. We're on the tarmac, and we used a couple of the FBI planes to take us back and forth to the islands. We just set up the coordination with them, and they took us whenever they were able to schedule things. Um, this is an apartment building in San Juan. You can see where everything is smashed out. And you got to think, not only is that apartment not going to be used, but all the people that work there, that maintained it, that the managers, the guys that emptied the garbage, all these people have no jobs until this is put back together again. This is a typical street in San Juan where there's damage to the fence, there's debris that's blown over, and there's the organics, the trees. Um, Everywhere you looked, it looked like this. The landfills, I think there were 27 of them on the islands. They were pretty much at the end of life, pretty full before the storm hit. So the garbage was just piling up, and they didn't know what they were going to do with it. So they ended up eventually taking just the trash and garbage and leaving all the organics because there was absolutely nowhere to put it, and leaving the recyclable material out because there just was no room in the landfills to put this. This is power line spaghetti. This is nice and neat. It's moved off to the side, but usually it's strewn across parking lots, across roads, just absolutely hindering any sort of traffic. It floods a lot. This time of year in Puerto Rico, it rains every day. So you can see the organic material, and then where the trash was, it would just clog the sewers. So every day it would rain, every underpass would flood, all the low-lying areas would flood, and it just created a traffic nightmare. On top of that, there was little power to the city, so almost every traffic light was out. So it was quite an undertaking just to get from point A to point B, and most of the routes were designed to avoid low places and the least number of traffic lights possible. This is a photo of a field of solar panels that were pretty much wiped out and destroyed. Um, More piles of garbage. They would just show up. Somebody would come someplace. Maybe they went to work, and they just found the saturated materials that were in there. They took it and they threw it out. So as roofs were blown away, windows blown out, doors taken out, unless it's repaired, the damage is going to continue because, like I said, it rains there every single day. So inside these buildings, they would just continue to get drenched, and the garbage would pile up. In this case, it was just a collection place where people were bringing their garbage to put it someplace. This is the UPS building, I believe, in San Juan, and you can see the damage where hurricane tore into it. Zooming in, the roofs are gone, fascia's gone, gutters gone, some soffits gone, windows gone. It's going to be quite a project just to put this place here back together again, but they're working on it. Here's another area with wind damage and debris just strewn from somewhere, not sure where it came from. And look at the basketball backboard, how it's twisted all the way around from the front here. This is a school. Um, the metal material is stacked up in one place. The organic trees are laying there, and you can see this school is going to be in bad shape. It's been raining inside of there every day, and it's going to continue raining there for months. Um, when I was there, the schools were closed and they had no real plan to open them. I was told that as soon as the Army Corps of Engineers said the building's watertight and that it had electricity and it had running water, and when it was capable of serving breakfast and lunch to every student, which apparently is a part of their daily education, then they can open their schools. And in Puerto Rico, the network of schools is a lot of interaction between teachers and parents. They work well together to get things done. It's kind of like a super PTA to make things happen. This is the other side of the school with metal piled up, debris, and I don't know that you're ever going to be able to fix this school. It's probably more likely that it's going to be uh, bulldozed and rebuilt. And there is no formal recycling. All of the trash and all the garbage and all the recyclable materials all go to the landfill, and they're trying not to do that anymore. Um, but the country is divided into 79 different regions, and each of them regulate or don't regulate recycling at all. So it's left up to private individuals to gather up metal and try to sell it as scrap. So it's kind of like a cottage industry, but it's just terrible for the landfills. This is a local working class neighborhood near one of our leased spaces, and some of the damage on the roofs on the right. One guy looks unscathed, nice lawn. The other guy's got a pile of debris, looks like holes in his roof. Um, Hit or miss, I guess, and you can see all the dead trees, all that brown stuff. And I didn't have pictures of it, but you can see the rainforest in the distance south of Puerto Rico, and instead of being this lush, beautiful green rainforest color, it was brown. It looked like like these debris of here on the driveway. This place is Nacho Libre. It's a lunch place. They call these food trucks, but they're not really trucks. That's a container, a shipping container that's been outfitted with a kitchen. So this type of restaurant would have, or they'd be open. It's open air dining, and they'll have a small generator humming off to the side for refrigeration and their credit cards, and they were open for business. And this is a couple of food carts in a row. And when you go to the restaurant, instead of looking at the menu, they would have like a whiteboard at the counter saying what they had today, and then they just serve that until it was gone, and then scratch it out. Then I got to go to the Virgin Islands, but mostly to St. Croix. Got there um, a couple of times. Now our group was, we had two teams with 5 people each: an architect, mechanic, electrical engineer, and the environmental IH. We also had an administrative person who helped get the logistics going. Every morning the teams would meet, and then we'd either drive to the federal building or to the airport to get to one of the islands, and then we'd hook up with the local property managers or the leasing managers, because they're the ones who knew the people that were on the ground. And they would join us, but then the people that were with us, they had no power. And I've been talking with some of them, and it had been over a month before they had gotten their power. So this is one of the FBI planes that we were used to go back and forth to the islands. We asked for what the in-flight entertainment was going to be, and the pilot turned around and said, Gilligan's Island. So there's kind of humor, but every seat's a window seat, every seat's an aisle seat. And so now we're flying over St. Croix, looking down at some of the damage to these houses. The ones made of concrete did better than the ones made of wood. You could see here debris. You could see roofs missing inside of some of the houses. Another view is we're only about 1,200 feet off the ground. It's pretty much how the elevation that we flew in. Some damage to this location here. Pause. You can see in this recording, or this photo here, it looks like a bunch of school buses. I'm not sure where the school is, but the property managers that would join us, they knew the lessor and they knew the customers. And there was one property manager in particular, Egigio, who went with us. He owned a house about 15 miles away from the office building, and I had asked him, well, what does everybody do at night? You know, there's no lights, there's no power. And big smile on his face, and he waved his arms, and he says, everybody comes out. Everybody comes out. We sit there, we talk, we play board games, we all get to know each other. There was this one guy, he moved in 6 months ago. Nobody ever saw him. He'd go to work, come home, he'd stayed in, but now he's like family. So we're all getting along and we're all pulling through this. And it's really not that unpleasant when this is happening in the evenings. And he said every night they have to decide who would have the most important job tomorrow, which was who's going to bring the ice. So there's some more damage here, and you see some of the blue tarps. If you've got a blue tarp, that means you put a roof up to stop the rain from coming in, and you're trying to fix the place. I found out recently that FEMA was giving $1,000 roof repair check, kind of no questions asked. But after that, you needed your private insurance to fix up and take care of the rest of the place. So we go to the buildings, and we would ask, it's pretty much the same question as we go there. With Egigio, it's when we get there, how are you? How is your house? How is your family? Always asking when we're trying to catch up. And I'm fine, still no electricity. My brother and his family, they're staying with us. My cousin is fine, we heard from him last night. Uncle's insulin is in the fridge. My sisters come over and they do their family's laundry. Over and over and over. I told Egigio I was doing this log, and he says, you need to tell the story of my Puerto Rico. You can see some of the buildings seem to have done all right, and some of them are just gone. This is outside the window of a building that should have been bulldozed, but it's still sitting here almost 3 weeks after the storm had hit. But there's just not enough resources or enough people to go out there and take the building out. Well, we'd get to our buildings, our team would, and some of the buildings had been repaired, some repaired well, some not repaired so well, and some not repaired at all. Different lessors treated their buildings differently. Roofs blown off, and there was messes everywhere. So we go in there, we're looking for daylight and active leaks. We're looking for mold infestation, saturated materials, water damage. There was a couple of buildings that we classified as being uninhabitable. When that happens, GSA will get with the lessor and come to terms with the end of the lease, and then we'll sit down with the agency and try to find a new place to put them in so they can continue with their mission. This was like a quarter-inch window pane that was blasted out by something. And it looks pretty good because they cleaned everything up and put a new piece of glass in there. But on the bottom, those indentations under the windowsill, they're from my knuckles. The stuff was soft like a loaf of bread. So what happened is that wall was saturated, and that wall's going to end up having to come out. That's a moisture meter I'm holding in my hand. It shows 48% moisture. So the picture looks nice because it was cleaned up. They got a little bit of paint on it, but that material was saturated, and it's going to simply rot, and it'll start to foster mold growth in there. So that's going to be coming out. This is one of the offices of one of the leases, and it had leaked, and they cleaned it, and then it leaked again because it rains every day. The manager of this facility was there, and I go, where's everybody at? What do? Do they work at home? Do they go someplace else? And it's no, they're just staying at home. They're leaving the work here, and they're using their leave time and trying to get their homes and their families together. And the future is really unclear on what they're going to do, but we want to try to find a new place for these people to work. This building here, that's a window grill to the out of doors, and it was east facing, so when the hurricane hit, the water was coming through this, and they told us there was 6 inches of running water going through the hallway from this window grill into the space. So really destroyed. And some of the buildings weren't kept very well. The windowsill here and the wall were saturated, and if you look at the window, you'll see what they did. That green stuff is supposed to seal the window, but that's mailing tape, which you would use on a carton to ship for mailing. And they used that, so the water just poured through there, and it saturated the drywall. That's all got to come out, and the carpet was ruined as well. This is the back of the Hamilton house. The original brick is part of that original building where Alexander Hamilton worked with before he went to New York, and the yellow building in the back is the Department of Justice. This is on St. Croix, and they had no air conditioning in that building because it was lying in a heap on the side of the building. So they were trying to dry everything out with fans. They're fighting a battle, but the mold is ultimately going to win in Hamilton House. This is pallets and pallets of FEMA water. There was water. A lot of places had the water. A lot of food was stacked up in the snacks, the meals ready to eat, and there were flatbeds loaded with generators that we saw at different places. But there was plenty of supplies that were out there ready to be distributed. In this case, they were being shared by the federal employees. This is the back of one of the leased facilities. Now this is 3 weeks after the storm, and the landlord hadn't really done anything, and power lines are just still lying there. Then this metal is wrapped around a telephone pole or a power pole. Try to imagine how loud that was when that stuff was slicing through the air. But someone's got to come and pick this stuff up eventually. This was a leased facility that lost a roof. You can see the daylight. So this is 3 weeks. This is something that's going to be a total write-off, a total loss. This is the side of that building, and it's the wall with the drywall is on top separates this space from one of the leased spaces that we had. So I don't know what we're going to do with those tenants, but we have to move them out. This place is uninhabitable. This is a place showing the water damage from an active water leak because it rains every day, and the roof just simply isn't put there, and you can see the mold infestation, mold coming up on the walls. There was one building, I think it was this building, where the roof blew off, and the lessor went and got the roof and put it back on, and it's just sort of sitting there like I don't know, but it's just sort of sitting there. You can see how everything is ruined and damaged here. This was somebody's workstation at the airport. TSA, immigration, they're sitting in places that have these sort of conditions there. It's really pretty bad. So I was pretty awestruck at how quickly and thoroughly all of our material wealth and status can be wiped out. Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands were already over $120 billion in debt to the federal government and contemplating bankruptcy. It really seems insurmountable when you look at the big picture, but if you look at the little picture, you see hope. You see hope everywhere. The power grids are coming back, the buildings are coming off the generators, schools with the groups of teachers and administrators are starting to work up, and the debris is being cleaned. It's being moved up. And hope lies in the small picture, in the little picture. And that first story, I never got that first story out of my head about these families coming down to pick up their families. Well, on the way back, when I landed in New York, on the jetway, there were 32 wheelchairs in the jetway to pick up elderly people that were coming back to the States trying to get out of Puerto Rico. So hope lies in the greeting that I heard Egigio say so many times. How are you? How's your house? How's your family? What we've been able to do is we set up, if you're interested in helping, we've set up a contact, 5 different contacts here with these people who will receive whatever you would like to ship to them if you care to. The first thing that we did at our church is we raised about $1,100 and we shipped solar powered lanterns to these people who are then going to go and distribute them to various places along the island.